Alright, we got a lot to get into in today's video. Lewis and Almeida card happens this Saturday. Lewis maybe got arrested, it seems, and MMA guru 10-7's Ariel Helwani. So that's what we're covering today. Starting off with the first fight of the card for Derek Lewis versus Almeida, which is, I don't even know how to say this guy's name, Fernandes versus Marc, Diakiese, whatever. Some black guy versus a Brazilian. Don't know the Brazilian at all. I've never heard him before. As for Marc, we know that he's not a good fighter, alright? This guy's just not that good. We saw him lose to submission by Joel Alvarez, which he did get rocked by an illegal strike, if I remember that fight correctly. So there's kind of an excuse for that loss, but we saw him lose a decision to Michael Johnson. And if you're losing a decision to Michael Johnson in 2022, you're not a good fighter. Straight up, you're just not a good fighter. So I'm going to pick the Brazilian. Usually when there's a fight in the hometown of a fighter, they give him a matchup that's good for them. So I'm going with Fernandes. As for the next fight up, it's a women's fight. Women MMA, you just never know. Might as well flip a coin. Unless they're ranked, like this next fight, Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes. Angela Hill fights are always tricky to pick because she's kind of good, sort of, a little bit. But she has horrible luck with decisions. And she's getting old and she's kind of losing her game a bit. As for Denise Gomes, she's coming off of an amazing win over Yasmin Yaguiri, I think is how you say her name. Yasmin was a highly touted female MMA prospect. And Denise Gomes smoked her in like, what was it, 20 seconds? Absolutely amazing. Denise is only 23 years old. She's got everything ahead of her, while Angela Hill is just old. She's coming off of a 5-round domination loss to Mackenzie Dern. And she's 38 years old. That is so old for a female fighter. So yeah, I'm picking Denise Gomes. Now, Victor Petrino versus Modestas Bukauskas. This is an interesting fight. Victor Petrino is horrible, alright? He's not that skilled, but he's so jacked and athletic. Not a lot of skill, but amazing genetics, amazing physique. We saw him get a submission win over Marcin Petrino, which is pretty solid win. It was a rather kind of a boring fight, but he got it done. But the fight before that with Anton Kruschewsky, so many mistakes were made in that fight. It was just, Petrino would do something really stupid, or Kruschewsky would do something stupid, then Petrino would do something even more stupid, and then Kruschewsky would do something even more stupid, and then Petrino would win this position. Because it was mainly a grappling fight. So, Petrino, it just depends if you have faith in Petrino and the people around him, because he is a young fighter, and I'm sure he's looked at his last couple fights and looked at his mistakes and is wanting to get better. He's only 26, and again, he has amazing genetics to be a great fighter. It's just, can he put it together up here? So, and as for his opponent, Modestas Bukauskas, he had a really boring fight against Sau Paulo. Sau Paulo is not good, so that's not a great win. But he does have a win over Tyson Pedro. Now, in that fight, Pedro, it looked like something was off with him. He never made any excuses, but I don't know what to say. Tyson Pedro has been looking really good in his last fights, except for his fight with Bukauskas, so it's a tough one to call, but I think I'll go with Victor Petrino because I think he's just more athletic. I think they're both young fighters, but I think he is going to be improving a lot more in between his fights than Bukauskas is improving between his fights. So I'm picking Petrino. Now for this next fight, Victor Hugo versus Daniel Marcos. I believe this is Victor Hugo's debut because I haven't seen any fights on his, or UFC fights on his record. So, as for Daniel Marcos, we saw him have a very close fight with Davy Grant, and it was kind of a robbery because Davy Grant kind of won that fight. And Davy Grant's good. So if you can make it at least somewhat close with Davy Grant, because again, it was a really close fight, you gotta be pretty good at fighting. So I'm gonna pick Daniel Marcos to win, and also just because I don't really know who Victor Hugo is. Now this next fight, it kind of frustrates me. Rinat Fakhretdinov versus, I'm just gonna say Dos Santos because I'm not gonna try to pronounce that. Fakhretdinov is probably already like top 5 level, top 7 level. He's such a good fighter. He's just dominating every fight he has. Smoked Kevin Lee. That was kind of depressing to watch. He smoked him in under a minute. Had a dominant victory over Brian Battle. Really, really good fighter. And as for Dos Santos, he's got good wins on his record. He has a knockout win over Sean Strickland. But that was the welterweight Sean Strickland, which was over 5 years ago. But still, that's a great win. Lost to Li Liang, which isn't that good. Lost to Muslim Salikov. That's not good. Has a win over Benoit Saint Denise though, but Benoit is a lightweight and he's fighting at welterweight, so decent record, but again, he's up there in age. He's 36 years old, while Fakhretdinov is only 32. He's in his prime. He's a absolute definition of a prospect to be looking out for, while Dos Santos is on his way out. He's 36 years old, much shorter, much smaller at welterweight than Rinat is. So it's a pretty obvious pick, in my opinion. Now, onto the main card, we have Ismael Bonfim versus Vinc Pichel. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Ismael Bonfim was touted as an amazing prospect, but kind of got dominated in his last fight against Benoit Saint Denise. Ismael Bonfim, because you can't just say his last name because his brother's also in the UFC. Ismael Bonfim just didn't know how to block a body kick. He didn't know how to handle that in his fight against Benoit Saint Denise. Benoit was just slamming him with body kicks. Eventually got him to the ground and submitted him in the first round. It was pretty shocking. It was on the same card where there were so many upsets. I think it was the same card where Guram Kutateladze lost to that one fighter Oliveira was cornering from shoot the box, which is absolutely crazy. So maybe it was just the mystique of that card that made him lose or something. I don't know, but see my brother walking in the background. But yeah, that was an absolutely insane card. Bonfim has a lot of skills. We saw him absolutely smoke Terrence McKinney, beautifully setting up that flying knee, which hit McKinney when his mouth guard was out, which must have been awful. Although McKinney's kind of making a comeback because they keep feeding him cans, so maybe he can turn around his career a little bit. But as for this fight with Ismael Bonfim, I think he's going to look at his last fight, his last loss, and look at his mistakes, overcome them. He's only 27 years old. He just got into the UFC. He knows that his career is ahead of him. He's got a lot of money to make, his legacy to define. And as for this other guy, Vinc Pichel, what a weird name, first of all. That's making me very suspect of him. 40 years old. Awesome mustache, though. That is one of the best mustaches I've ever seen. I mean, that is savage. But he's old, man. 40 years old, going up against a 27-year-old Brazilian who hasn't made a lot of money yet. He knows that the future's ahead of him, while this guy knows he's on his way out. So, gonna go with the Ismael Bonfim win. The next fight on the card is Rodolfo Vieira versus Petrino. Haven't heard much of this Rodolfo guy. He has a submission win over Cody Brundage, which, I mean, Cody Brundage, don't even get me started on that guy. That guy is one of the worst fighters I've ever seen. Such a coward. But anyways, he lost to Chris Curtis by decision. Chris Curtis is basically a moving body bag. So that's if you're losing to Chris Curtis by decision, that's not a good sign. Also lost to Anthony Hernandez by submission, which Anthony Hernandez is a really good prospect in the middleweight division, which isn't that bad of a loss, but still doesn't have that great of a record in the UFC. Not that many outstanding performances or wins. Now, Petrino, on the other hand, he's pretty decent. Has a good win over Christian Leroy Duncan, which was kind of a middleweight prospect coming out of England that MMA Guru was kind of hyping up. But his fight IQ and decision making in his fight against Petrino was horrible, absolutely horrible. He was just doing all this extra karate, taekwondo stuff that he just didn't need to be doing. It was a rather embarrassing performance. But yeah, Petrino has some pretty solid wins. AJ Dobson, Gregory Rodriguez. So Petrino is an all-around decent fighter. Doesn't really have that X factor, but he's a solid fighter, and I'm going to pick him to win this Saturday. All right, next fight on the card, Caio Borralho versus Abus Magomedov. Now, this is a very interesting fight because Borralho has some serious skills. Got a round 2 submission over Michael Oleksiejczuk. That's a great win. Michael Oleksiejczuk is an amazing fighter. He's super tough. He's got that dog in him, as Izzy would say. Oh, Izzy would mean that in a very different way, I suppose. But we saw how tough he was against Chidi Njokuanu, getting absolutely beaten and battered in that fight, but coming back to win it in the first round with a knockout. Absolutely amazing performance. So if Caio Borralho can beat that fighter, he's got a pretty good chance at. I think he's got a pretty good chance at beating Abus Magomedov because Abus Magomedov is a quitter. He's a bit of a coward. He's a bit of a bully. He's a bully fighter. All right. He bullied Sean Strickland in round 1, and that didn't work out for him at all. And then what happened to him? He really broke within the first 3 minutes because Sean Strickland said, once he broke his grip when Abus had Sean Strickland on the ground. Once Sean broke his hands apart, Sean knew the fight was over. Sean knew he won from that point onward because he knew Abus had nothing left after that was like 3 minutes into the fight. Abus is a round one fighter. He's kind of similar to Hamza in that way. He gives everything he has in the first round. He's super strong, super powerful, pretty good striking. He was landing some decent stuff on Strickland in that first 3 minutes at least. Absolutely smoked Dustin Stolfus, which, I mean, Dustin Stolfus, does that guy really need to be in the UFC in the first place? Like, not really that impressive. It was a great win, but against a horrible opponent, so you can't really credit it with much. So, I think it's going to be a tough first round for Caio Borralho, but I think he's going to weather that storm, make it into the second, third rounds, implement his grappling, and get the victory. Now, this next fight in the heavyweight division, Rodrigo Nascimento Vieira versus Dontel Mays. Both of these fighters are just fat, untalented. I mean, just picture these two fighters and then picture like Tom Aspinall or Sergey Pavlovich or John Jones or someone like those guys. So many levels above. It's crazy. These guys are just bottom of the barrel, awful. I just wish that fighters like this weren't in the UFC, to be honest. They're just hard to look at, you know. It's cringy to watch them fight. But that being said, Dontel Mays is coming off of a good win over Andrei Arlovsky. I got him out there in the second round by TKO. I mean, it's Andrei Arlovsky in 2023, I think. Yeah, that was this summer, this June. So it's not really that impressive. Here's how bad Dontel Mays is. Got held up against the cage for 3 rounds by Augusto Sakai in February. So this isn't like a long time ago or something. This is very recent. He's had these pathetic losses. Now, as for Rodrigo Nascimento Vieira, coming off a decision win over Ilir Latifi, not sure how to pronounce that, and he had a pretty kind of a close fight against Tanner Boser when Tanner Boser was at heavyweight. Now he's at light heavyweight. So he kind of just controlled him with grappling, kind of just laid on him, really. Nothing too impressive, you know. These are just two fat heavyweights. I wouldn't really bet on this fight. I guess you could. You know what? I'll just go with Rodrigo Vieira, Nascimento Vieira, probably just getting a win by controlling Dontel Mays. Dontel Mays does not have good grappling at all. We saw that in his fight against Hamadi Abdel Wahab, but now it says it got overturned. But I remember him winning that fight. Maybe Hamdi popped for steroids or something. I'm not even sure why that happened, but in the original outcome of that fight, Hamadi won by his wrestling, I think. So Dontel doesn't have that good grappling, and Rodrigo Nascimento Vieira does. So I'm just gonna pick Vieira. Now this is actually where it gets interesting in the co-main event: Gabriel Bonfim versus Nicholas Dalby. Gabriel Bonfim, I think, is going to go a little bit further than his brother. I think he's going to have a more successful career. I think he's more talented than his brother. Also, he's in a pretty significantly less stacked division. It's pretty safe to say lightweight's the most stacked division. Welterweight's probably like the 4th most stacked, so I think his chances to make it further are pretty high. We saw how good he was against Trevin Giles, just cinched up that guillotine and submitted him in a minute and 13 seconds. Now, Trevin Giles is a pretty decent fighter, nothing too special. Has a win over Preston Parsons. I think that fight was really boring. I remember that. He has a really good win. I think Trevin Giles has a win over, Roman Dolidze and James Krause, and he also has a win. I swear he has a win over some really weird wins in his career, I think. But Trevin Giles not too bad. So to submit him in a minute and 13 seconds is very impressive at 26 years old as well. So he's a very, very good fighter. Now for Nicholas Dalby, on the other hand, soy boy, cuck, liberal, married to a psychopath. In his Instagram handle, all sorts of cringe flags that he's supporting. Coward, weak, mentally at least. And he's going to get smoked by Bonfim. Absolutely smoked, I think. Dalby, first of all, he's 38 years old. Bonfim is, 26? Yeah. 26, young, Brazilian. Knows that there's money to be made. There's a future for him. While Dalby, he's on the other end of the stick. He's on his way out. He's had his career, which, it's all right, I guess. Coming off of a win over Muslim Salikov. Muslim Salikov is a decent win to have, but that fight was pretty close and pretty boring, so nothing that crazy. All of his wins are decisions. Dalby, that is. Lost to Tim Meads back in 2021. Has won over D-Rod, which is not bad. But Dalby just doesn't have that X factor like Bonfim does. He doesn't have that finishing potential. That's the right way to put it. Gabriel Bonfim and his brother have amazing finishing potential. They just go for it. They just go for the finish. They're killers, and Dalby isn't. And that's what it comes down to. So probably gonna go with a round 1 finish for Bonfim. And now for the main event. Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis. Obviously, it was supposed to be Curtis Blades, but Derek Lewis stepped up on short notice. I forget how much short notice, though. He's had a couple of weeks. Not like Volkanovski versus Islam or anything like that. Although, breaking news, Derek Lewis apparently has been arrested for speeding, which is kind of, well, not that shocking when you take a look at him, but that's kind of out there. But I'm sure he'll get out of it. Probably just pay a fine or something. The UFC and Dana White loved Derek Lewis, and I mean everyone loves Derek Lewis, right? My balls was hot, and it had that viral moment. Everyone likes Derek Lewis. We like to see him fight. We like to see him win. It's super fun to see him win, like we saw against Marcos Rogerio de Lima with that flying switch knee. I think it was a switch knee. Landed that perfectly and just ground and pounded him out there in 33 seconds. It's good to see him get that victory because he's been getting dominated by grapplers recently. Well, not just grapplers, but his last fight he got dominated by Sergey Spivak. And then he got smoked by Sergey Pavlovich. Slightly early stoppage, but I don't think it would have changed the outcome. It probably just would have resulted in Lewis taking more unnecessary damage. But then before that, he got smoked by Taito Iwasa. Although he didn't get smoked, he had his moments in round 1. But, and then he got pieced up by Cyril Gane for 3 rounds. So, he hasn't had that great of a performance in his last couple fights. Especially against grapplers like Almeida. Here's the thing about Almeida. He's not a heavyweight. He's a light heavyweight. And light heavyweight grappling is so far ahead than heavyweight grappling. We saw that against Jon Jones. And this is what MMA Guru realized after the fact that Jon Jones versus Cyril Gane took place. MMA Guru picked Cyril Gane because he thought he could handle the grappling, keep him on the feet, and win a decision based on striking. Here's something that he didn't realize before the fight. Light heavyweight grappling is so far ahead than heavyweight grappling. So far ahead. Heavyweights have horrible grappling compared to light heavyweights. Light heavyweights are so much better. We see this against Jailton Almeida, Jon Jones, just ragdolling, dominating heavyweights. I mean, Cyril Gane looked like he was an amateur. In Jailton Almeida, he has been smoking everyone he's been facing. Round 1 submission over Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Then he had a round 1 submission over Anton Derkalj. Dominated Shamil Aber. I'm not even going to pronounce that, but his second to last fight. Dominated him. Although, if you watch that fight back, he got clipped in like the very beginning of the fight. That's the thing about Almeida. He is hittable. He's absolutely hittable. And Derek Lewis could catch him bad. Like, obviously, Derek Lewis has the most knockouts in the UFC history, so if Derek Lewis can catch him like he did against Curtis Blades, you know, everyone thought Blades was just gonna wrestle Derek Lewis. There's this kind of thing about Lewis where he kind of wins the fights you think he loses and loses the fights you think he wins. And this could be one of those situations, you know. Obviously, Almeida's a grappler. Lewis has horrible grappling. So it seems pretty obvious that Almeida's going to win. But you just never know with Derek Lewis. He's a bit of a wild card. But I think he's on his way out. I know people were saying about Lewis in his last fight against Marcos Rodrigo de Lima. But I mean, he's taking this on short notice. I think the UFC just offered him they probably just offered him his win money as well. So he no matter what happens, he's gonna get his win bonus. That's what I imagine the offer would be for him to take this. So I think he knows that. He doesn't care if he wins or loses. I think he just is probably showing up for a paycheck. Not that I blame him. I would do the same thing if I were him. But I think Almeida has such a bright future ahead of him. He's 32. Not that young, but not that old either. He's 32. He has a lot of time, a lot more money to be made for him, where Lewis has made hundreds of thousands of dollars already. So Almeida knows his future's ahead of him. He knows he can seize this amazing opportunity, and I think he's going to do that with probably a round 1 submission. I honestly see it going very similar to the Rozenstruik fight. Except the only difference is that I think Derek Lewis is just going to come out there with the blitz in the beginning, like he did against Marcos Rodrigo de Lima, I believe it was. Yeah. I think he's going to come out there with the blitz. Almeida's going to Almeida might get clipped a little. He might get rocked a little. But I think Almeida's going to weather it, turn the fight around with his grappling, and probably get a late round 1 submission. Alright, that's it for the UFC Fight Night card, Almeida versus Lewis. Now I want to cover something, well, actually I'll save it for another video. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. See ya.